Hello, so I'm Sarah Loveland, if you haven't met me before, and I teach people how to take great pictures with their phones and with their cameras. But today I'm going to talk about camera lenses because it can be very confusing if you're new to photography or if you've got a camera with one lens and you're thinking there's all these lenses out there. Do I need another lens? Do I need to buy this lens? What's going on with this lens? Lots of things that can cause a lot of confusion. So I thought, okay, let's talk about lenses. Also, if you've got lots of lenses, how do you know which one shall I take to this event? Which one shall I take for this day out? Do I need to carry them all? Or if you've carried them all for a while, you think, actually, I'm fed up with carrying all of this extra kit and then I don't use it when I get there and it's heavy and makes my shoulder ache. So what lens shall I take? Okay, so let's talk about that as well. But first, let's start, right at the very beginning. Okay, so say you've got a DSLR camera, okay, and you've bought it and it comes with a lens. Okay, that is usually referred to as a kit lens. It depends on the range. And on a lens, okay, it might be, you've got some numbers on the side of it, or it could be sometimes they're inside in the front, okay, or underneath. There'll be some numbers on it, and maybe that the numbers don't mean anything to you, but I'm going to make a little bit of sense of that first. Okay, so this lens, obviously lenses are different sizes. Okay, got a little lens and a big lens. Okay, now on a lens, this one says 70 to 200 millimeters. Okay, so 70 is the widest angle that this lens will do, the most we can fit in a picture, and 200 is the amount that we zoom in, so it takes us in a lot closer. Okay, whereas this little lens here is a 50 millimeter. It doesn't zoom. Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute. So on your lens, it might be that if you've got a kit lens, a lens that came with a camera, it might say on it 18 to 55 millimeters. Okay, so that number relates to how wide it can be and how much it can zoom in, that kind of thing. All right, so basically, when it's at the low number, you'll get as much as you can in the picture with that lens. When it's on the higher number, it's taking you in as close as it can, okay, in terms of zooming in, right? So that is what zoom lenses are all about, okay? Now, also on your lens, you might find it has another number. It might say that it's, it's got some other numbers. Sometimes it looks a little bit like a ratio, like it might say, this one says 1, and then it's got 1.8, okay? It might be that your lens says something like 3.5 to 5.6, okay? So on a kit lens, in terms of the F number, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a minute, it might have a range of numbers. So on a zoom lens, generally you have a range of numbers. And that means that when you're zoomed out, so say at the 18 millimeter of your 18 to 55 kit lens, the F number will go down to 3.5. But when you zoom it in, okay, to your 55, the other end of the lens, the number will jump up to 5.6. And that means that is the lowest F number that you can have across the range of the zoom on the lens, okay? Now, what does that mean, the F number, okay? So without getting too technical today in terms of that, basically, it's the size of the hole in the lens, okay? And it's how wide open it can be, okay? So the lowest number is how wide open the lens can be to let lots of light in and help it cope in darker situations, okay? So the lower the number on a lens, usually the more expensive it is. So if you're looking at two lenses and one's saying, right, that's a 200 millimeter lens, but this one is f2.8 and this one is f4 and this one's f something else, okay, usually the lower number is more expensive, okay, and that is because it opens wider and it works, it's more, sort of what they call a faster lens in low light. And that's because when it's wide open, it lets more light in, so the shutter speed doesn't have to, it can be faster, okay, it doesn't have to get slow when we get shaky pictures. So generally, all you need to remember really is that the lower the number, the more expensive the lens, and that's because it can work better in low light. All right. Also, that F number does obviously affect how the picture looks in terms of depth of field and things like that, but I'm not going to go there today, okay? So yeah, but that's what the F number means. That's what the other numbers on your lens mean, okay? So on this one, it says 70 to 200, and then it's got 4, okay? So the lowest number it goes down to is f4 on this lens, whereas this one goes 1.8, okay? Now, different lenses will have different numbers like that, okay? The effect of the picture of the F number will be different on different lenses. So if I put my camera on f4 for this one, I'll get a completely different picture to if I put it on f4 with this one. So don't think, right, okay, I need to be able to get this F number, or I'm going to need that number to get that effect. It will be different. It'll give you very different pictures. Okay. So that is what's happening with that. Okay. Now, on this lens, okay, I've got a UV filter, which is basically, it's a clear piece of plastic filter which screws on the front. It protects the lens. If a lens costs you lots of money, you probably want to invest in one of those filters. Some people say, well, why would you spend so much on a lens and then put a cheap bit of plastic on the front? Is that going to affect the quality? On normal pictures, you're not going to notice any difference in the quality. And if you scratch it or something knocks into it, okay, because accidents do happen, we can't always avoid them. It's much better to be able to replace that bit of plastic that you've put on the front than it is on an expensive bit of kit. Okay, so that's what they are. That's a UV filter. It's just clear. Okay, and you will find the size that you need on the lens. So this is a 67mm. This is a little one, and it says on there 49.49mm, and that is the diameter. It's the little circle with the line through it, the little diameter symbol, and that's what that means. That is the size of the lens. This one hasn't got a filter on it, but that is what that is. Okay, so that's the other numbers that you get on there. So really, on this lens, you've got your 50mm, which is the sort of the amount of zoom. Well, it doesn't zoom; it's a fixed length, the length of the lens, if you like. Okay, and then you've got the size, which is a 49mm diameter. So if you want to put filters, any kind of filters on it, that's the size you need for that lens. And 1.8 is letting me know that that is the widest open it can be on that lens. Okay, so that's what some of those numbers mean. All right. Now, you will read, if you read photography magazines and books, you might hear people say, oh, prime lenses are best, always go for prime lenses, don't go for zoom lenses. Okay, now do I agree with that? I think go with the lens that is best suited for you and what you want to do. Okay, so if you have a zoom lens, say you've got your kit lens 18-55, okay, what usually happens is somebody starts off with that lens and then they might go, actually, I can't zoom in enough, I need to get a bigger zoom, a bigger one. So they might go for something a bit bigger that goes up to like 200 or something like that, or 300, which will take them in closer. And then you've got two lenses, so you're going, okay, I want to zoom in, so I'll put that lens on for that. And then suddenly it's, I need a wider picture, I want to take a landscape scene, or I need to put the short one on, and you're chopping and changing a little bit. Okay, so that might be that is okay for you. So sometimes then people will go, okay, I'm fed up with changing lenses, I want one lens that does it all. So you might get one that goes from 18 to 300 or something like that. One lens, you don't have to change it. Okay, now that is absolutely fine, and it might be that is what is suited for you in your photography, and you could happily go around taking pictures that you absolutely love, pictures that look really good with that lens. Okay, now what sometimes happens is people then read, they go, oh, I should get a 50mm lens. People call it a nifty 50. It's good for portraits. It's good for, you know, in low light and blah, 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 and all that kind of thing. Nifty 50, right? So that is a prime lens. Now what that means is it doesn't zoom, okay? It is a fixed length. So you might get a 35mm one length, a 50, an 85. My macro is 105. Yeah, you get different length lenses in a prime lens, and a prime lens doesn't zoom, it's a fixed length. Also, what usually happens with prime lenses is sometimes that the F number is a little bit lower, okay? But what you'll find generally is if you put a prime lens on and take a picture, you might find that suddenly these pictures are just a little bit sharper, okay? A little bit clearer, or the pictures feel a little bit nicer. But you wouldn't notice that your other pictures aren't sharp enough or aren't lovely unless you suddenly switch between the two. And then you might go, actually, that zoom lens I've been using, the pictures aren't as sharp, they're not quite as good. And, you know, it might be that then you go, oh, actually, I prefer using the prime lens. But if you hadn't used the prime lens, you would be absolutely fine. You wouldn't worry about the pictures you were taking with your zoom lens. So are prime lenses better? Well, they can give you better results, but it depends on what you want to do. Because if you're going to start using prime lenses, they obviously don't zoom. So you're kind of either going to have one length and you're going to stick with that, or you're going to have a bunch of lenses and you're going to be chopping and changing. Okay, so it really depends on what is going to suit your photography. Okay, if you want to wander around with one lens on and you want to be able to zoom in and out, then go for a zoom lens. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that at all. I'm a big fan in getting the best out of whatever you want to use and enjoying your photography. It's supposed to be fun. Okay, so don't get too bogged down by, oh, I should have this lens or that lens. Have what have what works for you. Okay. Now, sometimes when you read magazines and things, they review lenses and they don't always necessarily review them in the situations that you would use them. So don't get too bogged down by things. Sometimes the details that they pick out might not absolutely be noticeable at all in your pictures, unless you're going to blow the picture up and put it on the side of a bus or something like that. You know, for the normal size pictures that you're taking and the photography that you're doing, you won't notice a great deal of difference in some of the things that they're talking about. Okay, so yeah, I would say go for lenses that, go for the lens that is suited to what you want to do. So if you know you want to be flexible, say for example you're photographing children running around. When I'm up in the studio, I generally have a zoom lens on because I'm in a sort of a fairly fixed position, like a goalie. Okay, and kids are running around all over the place, so I need to be responsive to that. I need to be able to zoom in and out without getting in their face, and when they're suddenly running at me, I need to be able to back off quickly, but I can't, without like climbing up the chimney. I've got a limited space, so I kind of use a zoom lens in that situation because it makes it flexible. It makes it easier for me to adapt to the environment that's around me, the pictures that I need to take. Okay, so that's why I use a zoom lens in that situation. Okay, so it's finding what works for you in different situations. All right, so that can make you more responsive if you can zoom in and out. All right, rather than move in and out. Okay, now let's go back to the good old nifty 50. Okay, because people read about them and they go, oh, I must get a nifty 50. They're the thing. And then they put it on the camera and they go, well, I don't really know what to do with that, and it gets left in the camera bag and they go back to their zoom. That is because they've started with a zoom. They've got used to being able to stand on the spot and zoom in and out. Okay, with the nifty 50 or the 50mm lens, okay, you have to move in and out. Okay, you can't zoom in. If you want to get closer to something, you've got to go there. Okay, you've got to move in. And I quite like that because it actually makes you work a little bit harder in your photography, try explore things from different angles and see what you can come up with. So it will feel a bit strange and very different to have that kind of lens, because you'll put it on and you think, well, I'm too far away, or it's not wide enough angle, I've got to move in and out, I've got to go backwards to fit more in, forwards to get closer. Okay, and you have to work a bit harder. So that is what was going on with that. My film cameras, my 35mm film cameras, have like a 50 or 55mm lens like that on them. That's where kind of they come from. You've got that kind of fixed length lens on there. Okay, now the nice thing about these kind of lenses, they're not very heavy. Okay, and when you put it on your camera, if you're used to a big heavy kind of zoom lens, you'll think, oh, that's nice, that's much better. Much lighter, that's great for a day out. So it is a lot lighter and a lot smaller. Okay, but you can't zoom it. Okay, now the other thing I like about this lens is it does go down to 1.8, so it's wide open, and that is great for getting lots of blur in the background. Okay, so it's very flexible really, but you have to move in and out and do the work. Right, so that is what that is all about, and that's why people get a little bit stuck with it. They go, oh, I can't get in close enough, I've got to move in it. You have to really move about and take pictures that work with that kind of lens. Okay, so that was that. Oh, that reminds me, actually, the other number you sometimes see on a lens is, has it got it on this one? It doesn't look like it has. Oh, there you go. It will show you on the lens somewhere the closest distance you can be, and that lens be able to focus. So on this one, it says 0.35 of a meter. Actually, it's probably about right, I think. On a longer lens like this, it's about 1.5 meters, 2 meters. You need to be that far back. If you're too close, the camera can't focus, and it won't let you take a picture, okay? Or if you're in manual focus, it'll be blurry. It will struggle, okay? So those numbers are sometimes on the back, on the bottom of the lens, or sometimes on the inside, but it will say, and this is 0.35 meters, sort of like slash 1.1 feet to infinity. That is the focusing distance. That's the range that the lens can focus, okay? What does it say on this one, just out of interest? Where is it? It's probably inside. They put them in different places. I'm sure it must say on there somewhere. Usually it says somewhere. I usually find it later. No. It might be a bit old, this lens. It might be that it's not on that one. But usually it's on there. Oh, there you go. It's on the switch. So, you know, it's basically saying 1.2 meters to infinity on that one. You can get a little bit closer with this one. It's got a little switch. But yeah, you'll see those distances on there. So yeah, so you perhaps can't stand as close with this one as maybe some other lenses, you know, and because it's 50. So that's where the challenges are with something like that. But you might find the pictures are sharper. You get that lovely kind of light in the background, that blur. So you can get some nice effects with that. Okay, so that's what these are all about. Okay, now I said, I think a little bit earlier, I said, oh, nifty 50, great for portraits, blah, blah, blah. People also say the 85mm is really good for portraits. Yes, it's good because you don't have to stand quite so close to people. Okay, so it's always a good because it does freak them out when you get too close. So those kind of lenses are good for that kind of thing. Now, the other thing people ask me about a lot is macro lenses. So macro means you can get in a little bit closer. Sometimes on lenses, they'll say macro, but they don't actually mean it's a macro lens. They mean macro and a number, and that means that is the closest distance it can focus on, okay? Whereas, you know, sometimes you can get a macro lens, mine's in my camera bag, which means you can get in a lot closer, okay? Now you get different lengths of those. So mine's a 105, quite often sometimes you get a 60mm macro, you get different length ones, okay? Now you can still use them as normal lenses. You don't have to be always in close doing like leaves and bugs and flowers and stuff like that with your 105 macro lens. So I use mine when I'm wandering around all over the place. So when I photographed before the COVID stuff, some cats for the rescue place, they struggle with to take pictures of the black cats because it's quite dark in the sort of cattery. I use that lens generally because it means I don't have to get too close, okay, and scare the cat, okay, and it means it goes down to 2.8 and it's good in that kind of low light. So I will use that lens for all sorts of things, not just for close-up stuff. So don't think, oh, okay, I need to get a macro lens just for close-ups. You know, you can use it for other stuff as well, okay? Basically the length of that lens, 105mm lens, okay, and it will let me do close-ups, right? So think of it like that rather than just for close-ups, okay? So now imagine, right, you've got a camera bag full of it. So you've got your kit lens, you've bought a nifty 50, you've got a 200mm zoom lens as well, and maybe a macro too, right? Maybe you've even got a wide angle because you're trying to do you like to do landscapes and scenes and get a lot in the picture, okay? So you've got a bag full of lenses. Now, what lens do you take out with you when, okay? Now, I'm a big fan because in the past I've carried a bag around and given myself shoulder ache, okay, on a day out. A big fan of just taking one lens out, okay? Now, you will always see things that you wished you'd had another lens for. So you will always see things. So if you've got your 50 on, you always see something that's a long way away. You think, oh, I wish I had my zoom lens. I can zoom in on that. Or some details on a building. I can't get close enough. I can't zoom in. That will always happen when you've only got one lens in with you. But learn to get the best out of that lens, out of the lens that you've got, okay? Go out and take just one lens, okay? And get past that whole, that niggle, the bit in the mind goes, oh, I wish I bought the other lens, or I prefer the other lens. I don't like this lens. I don't get on with this lens. I don't get good pictures with this lens. You know, quiet and all that kind of, those voices there. And just say, okay, I'm going to get to know you, lens, and I'm going to see what you can do. I'm going to try different things. I'm going to see how close I can get. I'm going to stand further back. I'm going to try different angles. I'm going to try adjusting the F number. down as low as it will go and see what kind of effects I get with that. Okay, and I'm just going to really get to know you. Okay, that's what you need to do, and do that with every lens in your camera bag. Okay, some lenses you will prefer more than others. Quite normal, because different styles, different lenses do suit different styles. Okay, but if you know you can get the best out of it, any lens in your camera bag, okay, you can just go out with any and just have a good time. So it might be that actually you go, all right, okay, I'm just going to take the 50 out because it's light, I don't have to carry loads of gear, and I know I can get some nice effects and things with that. Yeah, you can try that, so you don't always have to take all the lenses, okay, and spend half your life chopping and changing the lenses from one to the other, because you can take some great pictures, and also it challenges you creatively. So if you put a different lens on, particularly one you don't use a lot, and say, right, I'm going out with that one. For me, it's probably a wide angle. I use a wide angle for work if I'm taking pictures of interiors in some holiday lets or something like that. Rarely do I put the wide angle on any of my cameras for scenes and views, because I probably don't do that type of photography as much. I'm more about the details. But so that's the one that sort of challenges me the most in terms of being out, if I go out with just the wide angle lens on. I've got a few things I want to try, so I will take that. Okay, so yeah, so get to know each lens and decide which one maybe is a favorite, but then don't always stick with a favorite. Sometimes go out and take the other ones, because it's good for your photography and it's good for you, makes you work a little bit harder, and get some good pictures with your lenses. Okay, now say for example you've just got the kit lens, you've got the 18-55, and you're going, oh, there's all these lenses, I don't know, I want to buy a lens. What lens shall I buy? Okay, now what I usually say to people when they ask me that question is, right, okay, so when you're using your kit lens, do you find you're always at the wide end, that low number like 18, and you're going, oh, I can't quite fit it in, I'll have to move back a bit? In which case perhaps a wide angle lens is for you. Or are you always at the 55 end, the most zoomed in, and going, oh, I can't get in, I can't zoom enough, and having to move in closer, in which case maybe you need a zoom, more of a zoom lens, that kind of thing. So it's noticing with the lens that you've got what it is that feels like is limiting you. Where is it frustrating you? Can't you get enough in? Can you not get enough in? That kind of thing. Are you thinking, oh, it's not quite as sharp as I'd like? Then maybe, but I'm using sort of like the 55 end, and maybe go for the 50mm prime, or an 85mm prime, something like that. Or is it, I want to get closer to things, details? Then maybe you need to go for a macro. So it's looking at what you're doing now and where that's limiting you, where it's a little bit frustrating, and going from there, rather than going, all right, I need to buy this lens, I need to buy that lens, because it can get really expensive, lens buying. Also, I will buy secondhand lenses if I get them from somewhere that I trust, I know and trust. So like some of the online camera shops will do secondhand lenses, and they will check them, they even give you a warranty. So those are the places that I would buy secondhand lenses from, save a bit of money. Okay, because sometimes people will buy a lens or get gifted a lens and they don't actually use it, it's in the camera bag, and think, well, actually I want the other lens, so they'll part exchange it. So you can part exchange your gear at these places as well. So that's why you can sometimes pick up new stuff, or nearly new stuff rather. And also sometimes camera shops might have them as demos, and so they've not been used a lot, they've perhaps been out in the shop. So you can get some good quality second-hand gear if that's the way you want to go, sort of in terms of adding lenses to your collection. All right, so yeah, so that's just some tips and some pointers on what the different things mean about lenses in terms of numbers and things like that. Now on your lens, depends on the lens really, but on your lens you might have an autofocus or a manual focus switch. Okay, so when you're on the autofocus, you're using the camera's autofocus. When you're on the manual focus, you can twist the bit on the lens to focus the picture. Other switches you sometimes have You might have an image stabilizer, or it might say vibration reduction switch on and off. So that is to help with a little bit of wobble, bit of anti-shake kind of thing. It's an anti-shake thing. But if you put your camera on a tripod, turn that off, because that can cause a few problems, can cause a bit of vibration, a bit of shake, which is not what you want. So that's some of the other switches on lenses. Okay, right. So that's a bit of an overview, 100 miles an hour at you, about different lenses and what things mean, and maybe things to consider in terms of if you're going to buy a lens, or you know, what you might want to do in terms of buying lenses, or even just taking a lens out for the day. Yeah, just try different lenses and see what you like, so then you know when you go away what you're going to do. Okay, so I've got this trip coming up, so I'm starting to think about photography gear and what I want to take with me. Sort of thing. I lie awake at night thinking, well, what lenses shall I put in my camera bag? And because we are on a boat, you know, camera gear is going to be fairly sort of central there, rather than having to lug it around a lot. So I'll be not far from the boat at any point, really, in terms of taking pictures. So I can take some of my heavier gear if I want to. So I'm starting to think about what I will probably take. I will probably definitely take my 50mm. I will definitely take my macro, 105 macro, because that's a favorite. And then I don't know that I will bother with this 200, but I have got a 400, which is big and heavy, which I may well take. Okay. I have also got what you call a 2x converter, which you put between the lens and the body, camera body, and it doubles the length of the lens. But the one that I've got means you have to manually focus. So also it obviously extends the length that the light has got to travel to get to the camera sensor. So the longer the lens, the further the light's got to go. So the camera can struggle a little bit with settings and stuff like that if you're using a very long lens. So I probably won't take that, but I think I will probably take the 400, the long one, just in case. So I've got a good mixture then. So I'll have a 50 for my Canon big camera. I'll probably take the 50, the 105 macro, and the long one. And then I will probably take my travel Canon, my little Canon M5, and I will probably take a wide angle and macro for that. So it's kind of the two extremes, a wide angle and a close up, but that is a lighter system. It's a lot more compact. I haven't got that here today. And I bought that for holidays and for travel because I didn't want to carry all this heavy gear around. So it was a flexible, mirrorless, sort of more compact system. So I'll probably take that too. And then the other camera that I'm definitely taking is it's like a instant camera, like a Polaroid thing. It takes the Fuji Instax mini film, because I'm going to do a little bit of a scrapbook kind of journal where I'm going to take a couple of pictures each day and stick them in with that. So yeah, so that doesn't actually, I said it doesn't have lenses, but actually it does have some little attachments you can clip on the front of that. I'll have to track them down because they're sort of in random places, or some upstairs and some at home, I think. So that one does have that, but generally I think in terms of like my proper kit, then I think probably the ones I use the most are the 50 and the 105. They're the sort of the key ones that I want to use, but I will probably take the longer one just to keep on the boat in case there's any sort of wildlife or anything a bit further away that I want to get a picture of. But I don't think I'll probably, if I put money on how much I use that one, it's probably, I probably wouldn't use it much at all on that kind of trip. I think the last time I took it out somewhere was to photograph some red squirrels. And I thought, right, I'll take that lens, put that lens on, because they're timid and they're shy and they'll be a distance away. And that was the day I had that lens on, and the squirrel ran past me and sat on the camera bag. Now I have to be 4 meters away. I think something like 4 meters away with that lens for it to focus. So I couldn't do anything about it. So the squirrel just ran past me. I was like, oh, okay, hello. But fortunately, it ran away again. I could change lenses and then it did come back and I got some good pictures. But yeah, so sometimes, you know, it's not worth, you don't want to have a big long lens on because actually it can be a bit of a an inconvenience in terms of its size, its weight, and also that you can't focus that close. So if you're doing something and suddenly the thing comes towards you, you can't do anything about it unless you run backwards away from it to get the shot that you want. So yeah, that's just some thoughts on what I'm thinking about taking in terms of my trip. Ask me in a couple of weeks and it might be all different again. I might be like, oh, maybe I can squeeze that in, but I think I actually I need to, just think about what I actually really need to take. But taking a mixture of cameras. I might take a film camera too. We will see. We will see. It's getting out of hand. All the gear will be going, and I probably won't use it all. I'll probably just use my macro lens on this one. So they're definitely going. They're my two favourites, I think, and I'll probably work with those rather than anything else. But anyway, that is me. Okay, I've waffled on quite enough about lenses and gear. Okay, I don't like to get too technical and you should get this and you should get that. I really believe in getting the best out of the kit that you've got. Okay, really get to know it. Then you'll learn to love it. Okay. You don't have to go out and spend loads of money on things. There's nothing wrong with the kit lens that you get with your camera. Don't feel that actually you need to buy all this other stuff. You don't. You can take really good pictures with that kit lens and have a lot of fun with it. Okay. So don't think, oh no, I've only got this lens. Don't ever think that. Just enjoy taking pictures. Get to know your gear and have more fun with it. All right, so thank you for listening or watching, depending on whether you are watching this on my YouTube or if you're listening to it on the podcast. Yeah, I'm Sarah from Sarah Loughlin Photography. Bye.